K&N. Welcome to the Nevada desert. It's a pretty day, cloudless sky. Track temperature about 20 degrees warmer than last week, but there is a lot of wind blowing north to south from turn 3 to turn 2 as cars come up on track for the opening round of Sprint Cup Series practice.
And Mike, that wind, it's going to have an effect on these cars over in turn 2. We've seen that here in the past. That strong, gusty wind blows the car a little sideways coming off turn 2. A little bit of headwind down the back, but most effective it affects you the most off turn 2 over there.
See, the flags are pretty well out straight. Actually, I think the wind direction is turn 4 to turn 2, not straight down the back straightaway. To Darrell's point, hitting him straight in the side in the second corner.
Martin Truex Jr. in this 78 car, he ran one lap and he was quickest so far in this practice session. But I did talk to his crew chief, Cole Pern, this morning. He said, Larry, I think what we're going to do, because this is only an hour and 15-minute practice, he said, we're going to stay in qualifying trim. Where I talked with a lot of other crew chiefs, including Dave Rogers for Denny Hamlin this 11, he said we want to get at least one race run in where we have that data. And he said this can also be a very challenging racetrack to get that splinter height against the racetrack right.
Yeah, main reason, Larry, is because turns 1 and 2, a list of the drivers that have tested here and what they're saying about the track. 1 and 2, down where the tunnel is, the tunnel end of the track, is bumpy. Down low, the cars really want to hop up and down. And matter of fact, you can get in quite a bit of trouble going through those bumps, shaking the car loose.
There's Sam Hornish. He is fastest. First time in a Cup car here since 2010. And he runs right out and blazes the fastest lap of the session.
But his last trip to Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the Xfinity Series in 2013, he went to victory lane.
And just looking at that time that Sam put up, that's a 28.6. Track record here is a 27.9. Guys, I'm telling you, these guys tell me that after Atlanta, they are convinced these cars maybe are faster than they were last year.
Could well be. Here is one of the best feel-good stories of this or any season. From open heart surgery in December to back on the racetrack in March. That's the story of Brian Vickers. Here's Matt Yoakum.
Mike, 2 hours ago, Brian Vickers tweeted he couldn't be happier heading back to a racetrack. When he was climbing in, he told me it's almost like Christmas. Now, the one thing he said, back in the race car, there's a number of challenges this weekend. Number one, he has not competed with this new package, the engine and aero package. Then throw in the different tire that Goodyear brought here. So there's going to be a lot of knowledge gained during this practice session. And then, like you guys mentioned, he too noticed that significant wind, which was changing directions, either a crosswind or almost at an angle heading from turn 4 to turn 2.
Thanks, Matt. I mean, it's a remarkable story. His heart had rejected an artificial patch, and he went under the knife in December. And at that time, Brian said the doctors had a very low probability that he would ever race again. But his recovery complete, diligent workout regimen. And several weeks ago, the doctors said, okay, first weekend in March, you are cleared.
Mike, I think people just continue to underestimate the resolve of an athlete. You put a line in the sand. You say, look, I'm going to get back in that race car by this date. And you work out not just once a week or twice a week. You work out every day. And you do everything humanly possible to recover and get back in a car. I know that's what Brian did, and I know that's what Kyle Busch will do. When these people say 6 months, a year, whatever, you can cut it in half for most athletes.
Well, great to see Brian back. Let's go back to the garage. Chris Neville.
Well, Mike, Matt Kenseth and Jason Ratcliffe won 7 races back in 2013. 2014 didn't bear any fruit in that win column. Well, they've got some momentum on their side now, coming off a 5th place finish at Atlanta. I just spoke to Matt, and he said he loves this place. He's got 3 wins here. The plan for this short practice session, he said we're going to do 1 practice run in our race setup, and then we are going to focus on qualifying setup the rest of this session. But this team, they got their first win at Joe Gibbs Racing right here 2 years ago. go.
But how about DeWalt back on a car with Matt Kenseth driving it? They were with him 1999 through 2009. He won Rookie of the Year with this on the car in 2000 and the Sprint Cup Series Championship in 2003.
Yep, get out your old souvenir gear, just change the number and the manufacturer.
Well, and then put the RIP on the end of that DeWalt. You're looking good.
Got to get back to you on that one.
I'll break it down for you boys later. It's a little complicated.
Brad Keselowski jumps to second on the board. That puts Fords in positions 1, 2, and 5. That being David Gilliland. Sam Hornish, quickest. A look at the past Sprint Cup winners at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Ground broken in 1995. Bruton Smith acquired the track 97. Brought a Cup race here in 1998. And it's a star-studded list of Vegas headliners that have been to victory lane here. And that brings you up to speed.
You know,
Winning at Las Vegas.
What you saw there is the last 6 races, 6 different winners here. This, of course, one of the tracks we only come to once a year.
All those guys were headliners.
Big names on the marquee.
Pull in a crowd, boys.
Yep.
Speaking of pulling in a crowd, this place looks like it's going to be packed to me. I mean, the motor coach lot, all out where the motorhomes, I mean, all around this place. They've been having the dirt track races over here, sprint cars, and a lot of action around here early in the week.
Let's have a look at Eric Almirola here in replay. See what happened to him last lap around.
43 car. This is you can get too low. This track, see right there, this track doesn't have that nice smooth transition from the apron to the track. It's pretty abrupt, and Eric got those left side tires down on that the flat part, and it upset the car. Want to stay off that flat.
Jimmy Johnson up to third in this session, and caution is out. Turn 4. Got a spinner there.
Here, just roll here.
Yikes.
Take the shortcut right there if you want to.
Oh my goodness.
Next one. Really, really loose, obviously.
You know, I look at this car of Michael Annette's, and well, let's look at the replay first. And he's way off in the distance.
Yeah, he's coming off turn 4 here, and he's loose for a long time.
Now I look at that car, Darrell, and you know what I see? Marty Robbins.
Oh yeah, that's that purple color.
Marty's car was magenta and chartreuse.
Yeah, that's what
for good reason.
Purple.
It was a view from Clint Boyer, but what's funny about that is we were just
look out.
Whoa now.
We were just riding with Clint Boyer. He picked the throttle up well before the center of turn 3 and 4. Late exit of turn 4, he had to jump back out of the throttle. The car just wouldn't stick. So it looks like the same thing happened in a much worse case with Michael Annette here.
So Marty Robbins was a great singer. Had #1 hits on the country and the pop charts.
Yep.
White sport coat, pink carnation, things like El Paso, things like that.
Never felt more like singing the blues.
But he was a good stock car racer.
Oh yeah.
But he painted his car in those 2 colors because he said, look, I'm not a professional doing this, and if these fellas come up on me, I want them to make sure they know it's me. But he had a lot of fun, and he was quite a wheelman.
777.
Yep. Matt?
Mike, another driver having a stellar start to the year is Casey Mears in the 13 group. Now, there were 6th at Daytona, 15th last week. Coming here, they had high hopes. And Casey said the one thing that he was concerned about, looking back to last year's notes, especially trying to get a good platform going over the bumps. And right now, the car is loose. He says it gets looser as the run goes on, but he's expecting that to be good in qualifying trim. But they're working on race setup, so they're going to try to tighten that up. He did say also, as Larry Mack mentioned earlier, the bumps, a huge challenge here, and it was hitting the splitter going over the bumps.
And Matty, I got to tell you, loose is not good. I mean, I know loose is fast, but you can't be loose like 46 was, and that's what happens here.
Caution flag out for Michael Annette. Coming off turn number 4. And around he goes. Las Vegas, where Oh, just follow the pictures.
That's definitely one of those you have to let the picture tell the tale, right?
Area 51, was it just over the hill from here?
She's going to get in that truck, but realized that wouldn't take her where she wanted to go. So.
Kyle Larson, 4th on the board. Larry, saw yesterday, I guess, a bunch of crew chief changes over there at Chip Ganassi Racing. And I'm sorry, I did not get all the details, but there was a story coming out yesterday about a number of changes with that team.
Yeah, nothing was said about it in the garage area this morning when I was down there, Mike. They were being pretty tight-lipped about it, whatever's going on there.
Okay. And David Reagan, I know you visited with him this morning.
We did.
About his opportunity substituting for injured Kyle Busch.
Just what a great kid. I mean, he's got a great attitude. He's so excited about this opportunity to drive this 18 car, work with the guys on this team, and he really, really wants to capitalize. He thinks he can win a race. He said, I love Martinsville. I love Bristol and even Texas. You know, he said, I think we can get this car and me in a position where we could win at least one race while I'm in it.
Well, if he didn't think he could win, he wouldn't be in that car, right?
Exactly. And I think it's going to be mighty interesting if he does.
That's right. Because he would qualify for the chase, and what would he drive, and how would that work?
Yeah, and then Kyle comes back, and what if he won in it?
Wow.
That's what NASCAR just said. Wow.
That'd be interesting.
It would be interesting.
Danica Kirkpatrick in her 10 car, she's 32nd quickest. Had a solid finish at Atlanta last week, finished 16th. Actually finished 4th here in the Xfinity Series race back in 2011.
Down to the garage, and Chris.
And Sam Hornish Jr. right now at the top of the board. That team changing over to qualifying trim. And Sam, we just saw Michael Annett go around in 3 and 4. Others drivers talking about the wind and the bumps down in turn 1 and 2. What's the racetrack like right now?
The wind is a big thing. When I pulled out on the pit road, it actually blew the cowl flaps up. So, I mean, you get some definite gusts out there right now, but the track's actually pretty good. You know, my first time here in 2 years, first time here in a Cup car in 5 years. So, I felt pretty good about it. I love this racetrack, and it's got some bumps to it. It's also got a lot of speed, and I feel like the big thing that we need to do is just get our car riding a little bit better right now. And obviously, a lot of people are watching about what the wind does and this tire being a little bit harder, but everything feels pretty good to me so far. We've definitely got to get a little bit more speed out of it because everybody else is going to as well. But it's just when you come with a harder tire, it's already a place that's a little bit slick at times. You got a really windy day. Everybody needs to be a little bit tentative getting going because it is not the easiest place to get around.
And when Sam was here 2 years ago in Xfinity, he won that day.
That's right.
But that seems to be a big question on all the drivers' mind right now. And you heard Matt Yoakum talk about it. Sam just mentioned it as we watch A.J. Allmendinger in the 47 car, the tire combination. And A.J. in the 47 team were actually one of the teams that Goodyear brought out here a few weeks ago and did that tire test. And it's interesting because they've made the right side tire a little bit harder compound. It's actually the Talladega right side. But the big change is with the left side tire. They did a construction change and a compound change that gives it a whole lot more grip. I think on Sunday we could see some two-tire stops changing left side tires only.
Oh. Ryan Newman, 9th quickest. 56 minutes to go in this practice session. All right, so we'll invade Earth, okay, and we'll disguise our spaceships as RVs. No, wait a minute. They already did this movie. It was called Spaceballs. Here's a closer look at action brought to you by Sprint. Jimmy Johnson, only driver to win 3 in a row at Las Vegas. Stay connected to the Sprint Cup Series with Sprint during the Cut Your Bill in Half event. Bring your Verizon or AT&T wireless bill and your current phone, and they'll cut your rate plan.
You know, this race here a year ago, talking about the Hendrick Chevrolet drivers, Jimmy finished 6th after leading 34 laps, but all 4 of those drivers finished in the top 10 in the finishing order of the race.
Now, Landon Castle is the first driver to finish last in both races to start a season. Glenn Dunaway won the Charlotte race. That was the first NASCAR strictly stock race. and then finished last in the next one. But when he won Charlotte, he was disqualified. Illegal springs. He was listed last. So last in the finish order, first 2 races of the season, had not happened since 1949 until it happened to Landon Castle with engine failure 2 weeks in a row.
I was going to say, nothing to do with Landon Castle.
No.
Nothing he could have done any different there.
Nope.
Engine failures both races.
You know what? He's a young kid, too, 25 years old, and I tell you, he's a pretty good little wheelman. When he gets in a car, he usually gets a lot out of it, does a really nice job. Not like Larry, and you said, no fault of his own he finished last, but anyway, pretty good little wheelman, I think.
Hope he gets to run the whole race this week. Jamie Mack currently 6th.
You know, we were talking on our conference call the other day, when you look at drivers like Jamie McMurray and Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart has really gotten off to a rocky start. If you go back to before 2014, the way the points were structured and all, it could take you to June to overcome those 2 bad finishes to start the season.
True.
The way we're structured now, win here, win any of these races on the West Coast swing, and you forget about what happened at Daytona and Atlanta.
I always said that winning would pretty much fix or heal anything. It really will now.
Yes. Yeah, win and you're in. Yeah. With this new system.
Now, I was talking about on a race team. Fix or heal anything.
Yes. Rookie driver Jeff Burton making the leap from the Truck Series to Sprint Cup. And we mentioned Tony Stewart. He's just come out for a run here. And there's his first 2 finishes. Again, not stellar, but like you say, Larry, it only takes 1.
In Tony's win here back in 2012, it reminds me a lot of what we talked about as we had a big wiggle there off turn 1 and 2. Restarts here are so exciting, and that's what won Tony that race back in 2012. He was on the mark for 3 consecutive restarts late in that race.
New colors for Joey Logano this week on his Pennzoil Ford. Now, he is one of 4 drivers that have started the season with 2 top 5 finishes. The last time that happened, 1962. Jack Smith, Little Joe Weatherly, Rex White, and Ned Jarrett. 3 Hall of Famers did that.
I want to make it perfectly clear, I was not there.
Okay. Neither was Matt.
And Mike, last year when you looked at the guys who were fast, the top 2 or 3 cars here at Las Vegas, they managed getting over the bumps so well. And that's the area where Joey Logano is having the biggest struggle. Right now he says the car is just way too tight, not good at all over the bumps. They made a chassis adjustment and a spring change trying to get this car back into the track.
Yeah, it could be a combination of things. If the springs are too soft, obviously it's going to get down there and hit those bumps. And the reason guys try to work through those bumps, obviously the fastest way around the racetrack is right around that white line. So it could be springs, it could be a shock combination. That's why, you know, it's real important to run these laps right now before you maybe get into a serious qualifying trim with the nose all taped up.
The last time we saw this car, it was sitting in the woods in Loganville, Georgia. Travis Quapple's number 34. The hauler made it to Atlanta, and so did Travis, but the car was being delivered late in a plain enclosed trailer behind a dually pickup, and the crew stayed over north of the racetrack, outside Atlanta, and the rig was stolen at 5 in the morning. The car was recovered later that afternoon, and the dually pickup with its window smashed much later that night. But this little race team got more national publicity from the theft of their race car than they have on track since the team started.
He said that was one of his favorite car. I've had cars I wish people would have stolen, but he said that was one of his favorite cars.
Security camera hauled it away, and when a concerned citizen called into police, there was a race car sitting in the woods near his house. They sent the rollback for it. Morrow, Georgia police say they are talking to a person of interest in the case. But that's their favorite race car. They got it back.
He's got a little work to do, though. Right now, he's 40th quickest in this practice. 48 drivers here for this race.
Qualifying will be live later today. 28:54, 189.1 miles per hour. He's got a 10th in the bank on Sam Hornish for fast lap in this session.
But here's a classic example of how these Team Penske Ford drivers work together. Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski's in full-blown qualifying trim, and he has been the whole practice. He's only been out twice. Joey Logano, though, we saw him out there. He's making race runs. I promise you, he's gathering information for the 22 and the 2. Brad's gathering information for the 2 and the 22.
Well, it's almost reverse role reversal. Last week, the 22 was in qualifying trim, and he sat on pole. This week, the 2's in qualifying trim, and he's fastest in practice here. So they take turns. That's good teammates.
Yep. Michael Annett back out in his Chevrolet after a spin at turn 4. Here's Matt.
Mike Dale Earnhardt Jr. brought the 88 car back in the garage. Now, this was his first qualifying run with that setup, and he said the car just hopped really bad and it made the right front bounce, and then it unhooked the back of the race car, making it very loose, tough to hang on to. Now, his spotter, TJ Majors, had told him before he went out, comparing Jimmy Johnson, his teammates' line on entry to turn 1, and most of everyone else here in the garage here said Jimmy put a lot more arc into it, DW, that you could comment on even more. It said it got to the bottom later, but he thought it might have really helped him on exit of the corner.
Yeah, well, that high arcing entry, I mean, you pick up a ton of speed doing that. And then if you can hold it through the middle and off, then obviously it's going to make a quicker lap. But Dale Jr. was tweeting on the way out here, and he mentioned the fact that Killer passed away. His dog Killer passed away a few weeks ago, and Dale Jr. said he was going to get him a new dog. And I love how this guy thinks. Captain Augustus McRae, you remember him? He was in Lonesome Dove. I think you said it was Robert Duvall, right? Played that character. Well, Junior's going to maybe get him an Irish setter or something like that, and he's going to call it Captain Augustus McRae, but short for he's going to call him Gus.
Oh, that's cool.
So I love the way he looks at things and thinks about things.
With Clint Boyer here, Clint's run a total of 8 laps, but 39th in this practice session.
Boyer, he's a piece of work now, boys. He and Michael and all of them, the MWR group, were down at Monte Carlo last night doing a radio show. The mind of Clint Boyer is an interesting thing. The places he goes and the things he thinks of.
I was talking to a group this morning, and if you watch The Voice, and I think most of us do.
Oh, yeah.
Clint Boyer just has to be NASCAR's Blake Shelton.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He does.
Just that same freewheeling kind of humor, and let the rough side drag. Pick up the red cup and let's go.
He said this is the most fun I've ever had, and it's the best place in the world to do a radio show from, a bar.
Yeah, there you go.
Darrell, he never came completely out of the throttle that time through turn 3 and 4. He went back about 10% for about a second and a half, it looked like.
Let's see what he does down into turn 1 here. Rolls out over pretty good right there, Larry. Trying to stay above the bumps there. A little high in the middle of the corner. They're trying to miss those kind of whoop-de-doos along the bottom there. See what he does in 3. This turn's tough. Yeah, see there, he burped it.
He was in it more that lap than he was the lap before.
You got to be careful on 1 and 2. And this track, both ends are totally different. There's nothing either. Both ends are so different than the other.
Savoy jumps up to 37th. With that run, Jimmy Johnson is now fastest. He has a 10th in the bank on Brad Keselowski, and speeds are up to 190 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's a 28:41. Again, just a reminder, the track record 27:93. Might get there this afternoon.
And Michael McDowell moves up into the top 5. That's 4 Fords and Johnson in the Fast 5 right now. Looking at Alex Bowman as we check in Los Angeles with Greg Wolf and this Fox Sports News Update. It's West Coast Swing. We'll be headed for the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia and the STP 500 at Martinsville. First short track race of the season, March 29th. For tickets, go to martinsvillespeedway.com/tickets. Great little racetrack. Lots of action.
Yeah. Riding with Trevor Bain here, and you can hear him just never out of the throttle, just kind of working it a little bit. See what he does here. Briefly, out of the throttle briefly. Whoop. Started up the hill, had to back out of a little bit there.
He was 27th and jumps to 7th. Nice lap.
Very nice.
Everybody's going that qualifying trim now.
All right.
Only about 35 minutes to go.
Let's check with Matt.
Mike, the Las Vegas layout, similar to what many expect Kyle Larson to score his first win because he was so dominant last year at a couple different places. So how good is this race car? You were talking earlier that it was loose.
Yeah, it's really loose, but it's got a lot of speed in it, so that's a good thing. Each lap into one, I get looser and looser, so we working on that, try and fix that and get it out of the target Chevy. But I'm really happy with how fast it is. So we'll go to qualifying trim right here and see how good it is in Q trim, and hopefully it's quick there too.
Thank you, Kyle. And Mike, you mentioned earlier about some changes here at the Ganassi team with the 42 and the 1 to put a period on that. You were right. Crew member changes that go over the wall. A lot of teams have developmental squads that work in the Xfinity Series. What they've done is shuffle some players from the Xfinity up to Cup and vice versa. So you'll see those changes on Sunday. Chris?
Matt, Brad Keselowski was top of the board just a couple minutes ago, and Brad, I just was watching you and Greg Biffle talking about the racetrack, and I've seen it through a lot of drivers. Lots of drivers really using their hands and talking about turn 1 down there. How tough is it?
Well, Vegas has that really big bump over the tunnel in turn 1 and 2, Chris, and it's just trying to hold on to the steering wheel as much as anything else. But this track's always been very difficult in that section, but that's part of the challenge, and I think that's why a lot of drivers like it.
You guys just working on qualifying trim. What do you need the car to do better?
I'd like to be flat out, have more downforce and more power, so everything. But it's not bad. We just need to keep going.
Oh, Brad Keselowski, he swept the Xfinity race and the Cup race here last year.
Thanks, Chris. Here's a summit meeting.
And everybody talks about cookie cutter racetracks on the mile and a half. The only thing that these tracks all have in common is the bumps over the tunnel at every one of them. Whether it's Atlanta, Texas, Vegas, Kentucky, every one of them. Where there's a tunnel, there's a bump.
And where there's a driver describing his race car, there's hand movement.
Up and down, up and down. And no big secret, we see this bout every week. Odell Jr. says, hey man, what you got going on here? And it's washing out on me. Hitting the bumps, washing out.
Austin Dillon, 17th. He's run 11 laps.
Too loose there.
Too loose.
That's another thing that goes on with this racetrack. It's like I heard several drivers say, we get the car good on Friday and Saturday, and no matter what happens, when we come in here on Sunday, it has lost a ton of grip.
One week ago in Atlanta in the mist.
Looked like he in the 41 car, Regan Smith, made a little contact, cut that left rear tire down, and then I don't think the crew got that sheet metal pulled away quite good enough, and he cut it down again and spun it.
And car owner Richard Childress was not very happy because he said on the radio, he said, you know what, when the driver tells you it's rubbing and he smells and sees smoke, that means it's rubbing. Bring him back to pit road.
Now Brian Scott is back behind the wheel of 33 this week, running the full Xfinity Series and selected Sprint Cup races in this car.
Yeah, this is his first time to attempt to run the Sprint Cup Series race here, but he has 5 starts in that Xfinity Series.
And Larry, just to follow a little bit up on Austin Dillon, and so Austin says, I smell the tire rubbing, I smell the smoke. And I'm sure fans would say, well, why didn't he just pit? Well, you rely on all the other people to help you. You rely on the spotter, the crew chief, everybody. Help me make a decision here, because I don't want to do something that's going to take us out of the race if it's not a problem. But help me out here, guys.
Do you feel lucky? Jimmy Johnson, fastest. Brad Keselowski, second. And you could go down to the win and put a couple bucks on Sam Hornish Jr. at 200 to 1. He has the third fastest lap of this session.
And you know what, Mike, Larry, I just really felt like that this new rule package was going to fit Jimmy Johnson's driving style. I felt like it'd be back something what we saw out of him like in 2013 and before that. This a little less downforce, a little less horsepower. Got to run the car right on the ragged edge. Always said that 48 is one of the hardest cars out there to drive because they ran it so free. And I think that's going to show. I think it's going to play out as we go down the road here.
Yep.
But I definitely think this guy here will be one to watch on Sunday. Carl Edwards. He's won here twice, and you just look at the way that he and Darian Grubb and this group over there at Joe Gibbs Racing, the way they're coming together, the early part of this season could be one to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Chris, the win has Carl as a 10 to 1 shot. That seems kind of long odds for as well as they're running.
Yeah, well, in race trim, they were back in like the mid-30s or so. This is their first qualifying run here, and Carl Edwards popping up to P2 there. And I spoke to Carl before the practice session. He said he and some of the crew came out a little bit early yesterday, and he and two of the guys, they hiked deep up into the mountains out of town here and camped out underneath the Desert Stars all night. So trying to do a little bit of team building with that new team. And since we didn't hit the track until noon today, there was plenty of time to get back. But Carl Edwards saying right now, lots of speed in that 19. If anything, just a little tight turning into turn 1.
Well, she's built for speed. See that.
But yeah, you see Matt Kenseth here. He's third. All four of those Joe Gibbs Toyota drivers up inside the top 10 right now. And that's the other thing I walked away from Atlanta, looking like the Joe Gibbs Toyotas, that they definitely have made some gains with this package versus what they ran last year.
I think so. Keselowski back up to second again, 28.448. Johnson on top, 28.417.
Yeah, and Chris Neville talked about Brad sweeping the races here a year ago, and then you think back to qualifying, they swept the front row with Joey Logano sitting on the pole, Brad Keselowski sitting outside the front row.
Now Martin Truex was in race trim. He was one of the quickest cars. Now in Q trim.
Just
see what kind of number he can put up.
Really have been impressed with the turnaround of this team, and 2 top 10s already in the start this season off, and we'll see where he ends up here on this run. Ninth quick.
Yeah, this is Furniture Row Racing's 10th year in Sprint Cup. Martin's the 5th in points. That's the highest a Furniture Row driver has ever been in the points at any point of the season.
Yeah,
wow.
It's off to a great start. Cole Pern doing a nice job taking over crew chief role, and the team seems to be gelling right now.
And that's what neat. We talk about how the drivers in their cars are parked in the garage area. They're parked by points. And to see Martin Truex Jr. and A.J. Allmendinger and Casey Mears, we know it's early in the season, but to see them sitting right there in some of those front spots in the garage area, it's pretty cool.
You know what? You'll run better when you're up in that company up there.
You can see the bounce in their step right. Just in the garage area.
Listen, I always told Hammond, look, if we don't get up there near those other fast guys, we're never going to be a fast guy. You got to get up there to learn from them. Watch what they do.
And it's the first time that Martin has started the season with 2 top 10s. Chevy, Ford, Toyota, Johnson, Keselowski, Edwards, fastest. Here's a closer look at today's action brought to you by Sprint. Jimmy Johnson has the fastest lap at 190 miles an hour. Stay connected to the Sprint Cup Series with Sprint during the Cut Your Bill in Half event. Bring your Verizon or AT&T wireless bill and current phone. They'll cut your rate plan.
Mike, it's a B-52. I didn't realize this. The first flight for a B-52, April of 1952.
1952?
52.
Wow, that's older than I thought. Goodness. A lot of those have been were flying in and since the Vietnam era.
Yeah, well, you know, the beautiful thing about this race and this track, you get to see a race and an air show.
Yes, especially on Friday.
Oh, man. And if you want to be here about midnight, I think every airplane over there takes off around midnight.
And where do they go?
Area, what is it over there?
51?
Yeah, area 51.
And Dale Earnhardt Jr. just saw him. He was 29th that practice qualifying run. He only went to 18th, but Jamie McMurray in this one did jump up to 6th quickest after his practice qualifying run with about 23 minutes to go.
Why don't we ever hear about Area 50? or 49 or 48. I don't understand this.
That's that song, 50 Ways to Leave a Lover, you know?
Well, that's different.
How could it be 48 or 49? Why'd it have to be 50?
All right, he ran 2 laps, and he actually picked up, talking about Dale Earnhardt Jr., he picked up the 13th on that second lap, so it looks like we may see some drivers running more than 1 lap come qualifying.
What's good news for the qualifying? You know, you're going to pick up every session.
Well, now, first to qualify after last week's issues when 13 drivers did not get a chance to take time, Larry, NASCAR has made some adjustments to the practice and qualifying procedure here, trying to help that process along.
Yeah, and I think NASCAR knew everybody needed to work on this. The teams needed to work on it. They needed to work on the process. So now there's 20 more minutes between the end of this practice and qualifying. And we've always talked about the draw, where the draw sets several things. It's how you're parked on pit road. It's how you would go through inspection. That no longer will be the case. When you're ready to go through inspection, you back out of the garage area, old school, and you go through inspection.
Yeah, I never understood the draw to go through inspection. It just complicates things too much.
So now when you're ready, you go.
You go.
I know how that garage is. You got to keep it simple, boys. Got to keep it simple.
Let's see if this is faster than Jimmy Johnson's 190-mile-per-hour lap. Oh, Joey Logano 190.8 and Johnson 190.3, now second best to Logano's Ford.
And that's Joey, as we mentioned earlier. That's his first practice qualifying run in this 22 car, and he's going to go ahead and play 2 just like we saw Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Well, you know, I didn't think we were going to break that track record, but my colleague by the later this afternoon cools down a skosh. Might just do it.
There's Logano on his second lap against a 28.29, 28.55.
Slow down a little bit, yeah.
And it could be a couple of things. His run versus Dale Earnhardt Jr. Obviously the balance of the car, but they maybe went with a different air pressure package, and that could make a difference being faster on lap 1 or lap 2.
Car might have got hot. You know, we know that hurts performance. So something to do with probably tire pressures and the how hot the engine got. Just minor change. That's why you make these practice runs.
Ryan Blaney 20th in the Wood Brothers Ford, 29.20, or excuse me, 28.93, his best lap.
.29 with 150 less horsepower than you had a year ago, and a 2-inch shorter rear spoiler. So. Yep. It looks to me like the more things change, the more they stayed the same.
There you go. Jeff Gordon is the subject of this week's K&N driver profile. He just jumped to 3rd on the board at 28.43. This will be his final appearance in a Sprint Cup car at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He is one of just 2 drivers, and after Sunday he'll be the only one to have started every race here.
And he's one of the drivers we talked about earlier who has finishes of 33rd and 41st to start this season, 2 crashes. In 1996, Jeff started the season with 2 finishes of 42nd and 40th, and then rallied to win 10 races and actually ended up finishing 2nd in the points to teammate Terry Labonte.
You know, when you ask why would Jeff Gordon retire, don't think about his age, don't think about all of his numbers, just think about how long he's been doing this.
That's right, a long time. Ryan Newman now second fastest to Joey Logano. Jeff Gordon 4th behind John. Coverage of Xfinity Series racing begins tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern on Fox Sports 1 and streaming live on Fox Sports Go, now available for DirecTV customers. Xfinity Series in Las Vegas. Boyd Gaming 300 tomorrow. Here's your Fast 5, 1 Ford, 1 Toyota, and 3 Chevrolets.
You know, back to the Xfinity Series, the top 5 in points are all under the age of 24 right now after 2 races in that series.
But you know, Larry, I mean, yes, to those of us that are well past 50 and beyond, that's a sobering statistic. But if you add up the combined years of racing experience of those drivers, that's pretty heavy. Yes, that's a pretty large number.
Because most of them, I think, were racing before the age of 5.
Yeah, that was my point about Jeff Gordon. I mean, he started racing when he was 4 years old, for heaven's sake. So he's got a lot of miles.
Regan Smith 20th for Stuart Haas Racing. Kurt Busch learned this week that the state of Delaware would not file charges in his case. He has, the other news is he has signed off on and agreed to participate in NASCAR's Road to Recovery program, which has been tailored specifically for his situation. There is no definite length of time for that program, so we'll await further word.
You see what Brad just left pit road, and he stayed on that apron below the white line to turn 2. That's the blend line. That's what they have to do in the race on Sunday, as well as qualifying later on today.
Larry, last year there were 24 track records that were set, and the Penske drivers set 8 of those. So they're
third of them.
They're pretty well known for sitting on that front row.
Darrell, he's going to get to 200 miles per hour down here. Over 201.
Now he lacks a 1/10 and a half of being the fastest car in this session. Let's see if he can knock teammate Joey Logano off the top spot here.
He should be pretty good out here. He was one of the ones that came out and did the tire test. He just, I mean, that is just burping it.
Yeah, I mean, he was no less than 50% off the throttle. This ought to be a good lap for Brad.
That just makes you feel good when you let it up that little wee bit.
Wow. 28-26, top of the chart.
It's getting on down there, boys.
And we're up past 191 miles an hour.
Darrell, you almost, when you get to that point of wide open throttle, it's like you're going to have to do something to make it go faster. I'm doing all I can do.
Sun go down. Make the sun go down and track cool off.
Kevin Harvick coasts into his garage. He is 15th on the speed chart. 28.52, his 13th and most recent lap is his fastest. Casey Mears is 20th right now after 14 laps. Mears finished 15th at Atlanta, his best mile-and-a-half finish since Charlotte in 2009.
Jamie McMurray just split those two Team Penske Ford drivers. He's second quickest at a 28.297.
Alex Bowman trying to improve on a 29.05, which has him 36th right now.
It's just the beginning of a practice qualifying run for Alex.
It wasn't a terrible Atlanta. He finished 23rd. Pretty good run.
You know, when we look at that first round of qualifying later on today, certainly a dogfight for the 24 drivers to try to advance, but it's going to be a dogfight all the way out on the West Coast. 5 drivers will miss this show.
Bowman up to 27. And here's Jeff Gordon, who was in the top 5. He's now fallen to 9th at 28.43.
At least you don't have to go all the way home and come back next week.
West Coast swing.
Keep it out here.
Top of the chart, Jeff Gordon.
Attaboy. Yeah, 10-4. T1. 239. You really nailed 1 and 2 right there. Yeah, 10-4.
That's actually his spotter, Eddie DeHaan, who's up on top of the grandstand and watching the line that Jeff was taking. And I think Eddie's been up there so many years, he knows looking if it's a good lap, not even having a stopwatch in his hand.
But you got to love that. Yeah, everybody's just calm, cool. Yeah, top of the board.
All right, so what kind of a golfer is Ricky Stenhouse?
Really, really good.
Is he?
He's left-handed, too. And he and Denny Hamlin yesterday, I had to... We played out here, and it was, gosh, these guys are so good. I couldn't believe how far they could hit the ball and putt. Hamlin knocked in a couple of long putts for birdies. These guys are really good golfers. They're both left-handed.
He jumped up a little bit, but still only 34th quickest with this 17 car.
We were going over to the course, and asked Rick, I said, how do you play? He said, well, high 70s, low 80s. Yeah, sure. Because I hear that a lot from drivers, you know.
And then it's how'd you do on the back 9?
then I'll play when it's the worst day I've ever had.
Oh boy!
But no, he and Denny were really good.
Good.
And Michael's not bad either. We played with them.
AJ Allmendinger 23rd. Michael McDowell trying to improve on 15th. Missed it by 3/100ths.
And one thing I did find about that bunch, they'll bet on anything. They'll bet you made a bad bet.
Okay. Landon Castle needs to find some speed there. He is 40th right now. Josh Wise, 39th. Remember, 36 drivers get in on time. There's going to be quite a battle back there for 36th spot. Wise up to 38th. And then 7 provisionals. There's quite a list of cars here that don't have advantage of a provisional. This is the last race where we will use 2014 owner points to set the provisionals. Next week we'll use this year's points.
This is Tony Stewart's second practice qualifying run. He did jump up to 14th the last time. He just is starting this run here in this 14 car.
Carl Edwards' 5th fastest is the 5th fastest Toyota. And Joey Logano, he lost about 3.5 tenths that time from his fastest lap.
Yeah, he actually slowed down quite a bit with that run right there.
I'm not so sure that wasn't back out on the same set of tires. That's about what he ran on his second lap earlier.
Okay.
He ran a really fast first lap earlier and then backed it up with a 55, and it's about back where he is. So might be the same tires running them again.
Now Mike Wallace is on the gotta go list. Gotta go to get in the show. 29.96 is his best of 6 laps. And there's Ryan Newman on a flyer, Chris.
Well, he was 3rd quick in the last couple minutes. He slid back to 6th quick, and he's on his last qualifying run right now. The previous qualifying run, he said, guys, I was so close to holding it wide open in 3 and 4, but because of what I was doing as a driver, I had to crack that throttle a little bit. On this run, he's hoping to go wide open through 3 and 4.
Yeah, he got a little bit loose in 3 and 4 trying to do that, Chris. I noticed the car got a little wiggly with him, and I think I hurt his lap time.
Yes, sometimes the confidence level outweighs the grip level of the race car.
I think you're right.
J.J. Yaley 42nd and trying to move up with his Toyota. Here's Michael Annette's Chevrolet now 32nd. He picked up a spot or 2 there.
Obviously tightened him up a little bit from his earlier spin that he had. Michael Annette.
Brad Keselowski 1/100th slower than his quickest lap. And Justin Allgaier coming across from 26th, picks up 1 spot. 5 minutes left in the opening round of Sprint Cup practice. Practice now find 2 Chevys, 2 Fords, and 1 Toyota in the Fast 5. 2.5 minutes to go.
And boy, you can tell it because they are scattered off pit road right now. We got a ton of drivers out on the track and several that just all left pit road at one time.
Yeah, and all that traffic is really messing some of these guys up. There's Brian Vickers trying to make a run here, and he just got blocked by, see who that is. Vickers in the 55, the 83 car, yeah.
Matt?
Mike, you mentioned earlier where Jeff Gordon was just spot on his qualifying lap down in turns 1 and 2. That's where Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s teammate is having the most trouble. He just cannot get it to hook up down there. It just holds him up as he goes over the bumps. They tried making more adjustments for this last run to see if they could make some improvement, but he is great down in 3 and 4.
Junior picks up to 15th, Matt, with that run. And Kyle Larson goes to the top of the chart. 191.6 miles per hour.
And now we're only about 1.5 tenths, well, 2 tenths off the track record. But here's what I was talking about with all those cars trying to get out here and get a lap in right at the last minute. Brian Vickers runs up on the back of the 83 car here, and that just, Vickers was on the qualifying laps, and he was not a happy camper.
And Matt DiBenedetto was about 1.5 seconds slower than Vickers when that happened.
Yeah, actually, Matt DiBenedetto right now in that 83 car, I talked to him this morning. He said, I know I have to qualify on time. He's 48th out of our 48 drivers that's here right now in this practice.
Well, Larry, we were talking earlier about Kyle Larson and Jamie McMurray and that Ganassi bunch over there. I don't know what kind of changes they made, where they made them at yet, but looks to me like it paid off, whatever they did.
Well, I think it's always been a known fact that Chris Heroy and Kyle Larson, they've had a really good combination, good chemistry. And I just think Keith Rodden going back over there, Keith was over there, and I think he just took a lot to the Ganassi organization the year he was there before going back to Hendrick Motorsports. And now Matt McCall is McMurray's crew chief. So I think this all started throughout last year.
Like a pretty decent lap here for Martin Truex.
Trying to better a 28.68, and he is 1/1000th slower than his best lap. And that'll do it for round 1 of Sprint Cup Series practice. This practice session shortened 10 minutes from the posted time in order to provide more inspection time prior to qualifying. Here is your top 10, led by Kyle Larson. Here are 3 things you need to know about the opening round of Sprint Cup practice. Jeff Gordon, second fastest, looking for his first top 10 finish of the season. Kyle Larson was quickest, Jamie McMurray 5th for Chip Ganassi Racing. And Brian Vickers returns to the track and leads all drivers in laps run in this session.
Pretty impressed, though, the fastest Toyota driver, David Reagan, in that 18 car.
And here comes your leaderboard.
No surprise that Vickers ran all those laps. I mean, he's 2 races behind. He's trying to catch up.
There you go. Pretty good session for Chevrolet. 6 of the top 10. 2 Fords, 2 Toyotas.
Pretty impressed that David Reagan up there in 4th place. Not a bad run for him.
I mean, this is not unusual for anywhere we go, but it looks like to me this qualifying session coming up later on is going to be tight, tight, tight.
It is, Larry. If this were qualifying, the cutoff to make the race would be 36th right there based on practice speeds, and everybody below that line all the way down through 48th would be looking for provisionals to make the show. So certainly there are drivers with work to do prior to qualifying. Xfinity Series practice. Adam Alexander and the boys are next. NASCAR Race Hub weekend edition, 5:30 p.m. Final practice for Xfinity, 6 p.m. Eastern and 7:30 Eastern time, Sprint Cup qualifying. We're going to break the track record?
Yes. I didn't think we were, but now I'm convinced we will.
28:17 in practice. The record is 27:93. What do you think, Larry?
Yeah, they'll get them tuned up a little more. Plus, it's going to start cooling down. Start getting that shade down there in turn 1 and 2. A lot of grip.
Is the wind going to have to die down for us to do it?
Nah. Okay. I mean, it affects the cars a little bit off turn 2, but not. I don't think it'll cause us not to break the record.
All right, lots more NASCAR to come across the Fox Sports networks today and through the weekend. That does it for Sprint Cup practice. Let's join John Roberts.